Have you ever had to prove you deserve respect inside your own home? I was standing in the same room where I'd served coffee for 40 years. Her arrogant perfume thickened the air while her words sliced like a sharp blade. This inheritance isn't yours, Evelyn. What was Robert's now belongs to the children. Flawless black dress, hair pulled into a high bun, words cold as ice. My daughter-in-law had just told me, in my house, that I no longer had a right to anything. And you know what hurt the most? My son's silence beside her, eyes down, no courage to defend me. In that moment, I understood. I was no longer the wife, not even the mother. I was just a polite inconvenience inside my own home. But what she didn't know was that I was holding a small iron key in my hands, a key Robert had kept for years alongside his wedding band. And that key would change everything. If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss any new videos we post for you. My fingers trembled. I was holding a small iron key I'd found in Robert's drawer the day before. I still didn't know what it opened. I only knew he always kept it with his wedding band and a folded yellowed sheet of paper. While she talked, I saw my reflection in the living room mirror, gray hair barely pinned up, grief still fresh, hands marked by years of dish soap and prayer. And I thought, so this is how it ends? A lifetime of fidelity paid back with contempt? But what hurt most wasn't her words. It was my son's silence. He stood beside her, eyes lowered, unable to look at me. Right then I understood. I had bought my ticket into this suffering myself. Every time I gave in, every time I wanted to keep the peace, every time I swallowed injustice. I took a deep breath. I didn't cry. I simply said, God knows what's mine, and what isn't, He removes with purpose. She laughed, that short laugh of someone who finds other people's faith amusing. But in that instant, inside, I knew the silent war had begun. Tell me in the comments which city and country you're listening from. I'm excited to see how far my story is reaching. Have you ever felt invisible inside your own home? My name is Evelyn Grace Turner. I'm 68 and I live in Toronto, Canada, a city I always thought was beautiful, but that now feels far too cold. Before all this, I was an English literature teacher. I taught for more than 30 years. I believed words could heal, that stories, in the end, always handed hope back to us. But I learned the hard way that there are books' life rights whose endings we don't get to choose. Robert and I met in college. I was 22, he was 25. He was a civil engineer, full of dreams and certainty. I remember the first gift he gave me, a silver bookmark with a verse from Proverbs 31 engraved, "A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband." Back then, I thought it was lovely. Today, I understand I was a crown, yes, but one that learned to carry the weight without the shine. In the early years, we lived with little. I woke before dawn to make his coffee, baked bread, pressed his uniform. Then the boys came. Thomas first, then Michael. The house was small, but full of laughter. I spent hours sewing, cooking, teaching Bible verses while they did homework at the table. The kitchen was my sacred territory, the place where I believed I could turn anything around. Anger into cake, loneliness into soup, sorrow into prayer. But time has a cruel way of flipping everything upside down. Robert began to rise in his career. He became a project manager. His clothes got more expensive, the dinners more distant, and I started to feel that his world no longer fit inside ours. I, who once chose the dishes and the tablecloth, now sat waiting while he decided what to eat, where to go, what to buy. And still, I admired him. I told myself submission was love, and patience was a virtue. When the boys grew up, Thomas, the oldest, married first. He brought home a sweet, soft-spoken girl who, sadly, died young. It was the first time I saw my son cry like a man. Then came the second wife, Camilla, the daughter-in-law who now looks at me like an enemy. Camilla is the kind of woman born with the world in the palm of her hand. Beautiful, educated, a businesswoman. When she entered our family, I tried to welcome her like a daughter. But right away, I noticed she didn't need a mother. She needed an audience. She spoke loudly, filled every space, and always made sure to remind us who had more money. I, used to living with little, found it amusing at first. But over time, I realized every joke of hers carried poison. "Ah, Evelyn, you still wear that apron? How cute. So, vintage." Or, "Thomas, your mom really clings to old things. It's sweet to see someone living in the past." I smiled, but inside, I kept shrinking. After Robert got sick, pancreatic cancer, swift and merciless, the house turned into a field of silence. I cared for him day and night. I cleaned, prayed, fed him by spoon, held his hand as he wept, asking forgiveness for the years he'd been absent. He said, "You've always been here, Evelyn. I just took too long to see it." I answered, "There's still time. God is never late, Robert." Around then, Camilla started to help, bringing lawyers, spreadsheets, private doctors. I thought it was kindness, but today I understand. It was control. When he died a little over 6 months ago, I was left with empty hands and an empty heart. People went home, the flower arrangements dried up, and the house's silence grew louder than anything. The first overdue bill arrived a week later. The second, right after. That's when I started to realize something was wrong. The joint bank accounts were frozen. The family's attorney told me that, for legal reasons, they needed to review the estate. I didn't understand. Everything we had, we built together, every brick, every penny. But I didn't know the law can be as cold as the marble on the mantel. Even so, I believed things would be resolved. I kept lighting my candle every morning and reading the same verse. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding." Life went on. Thomas and Camilla came by less and less. Michael, the youngest, lives in Vancouver and works too much, so it was just me and the house. The pots began to feel heavier, the silence denser. But even so, I cleaned, cooked, organized, as if Robert were about to walk through the door and say, "Sweetheart, the coffee smells wonderful." Then, on a rainy afternoon, I found the key. It was inside a box of old watches alongside his wedding band, small, dark iron with a number engraved 31. At the time, I thought it was a coincidence, the same number as Proverbs 31, the verse he'd given me when we were young. I put the key in my purse, not knowing what to do with it. That night, before bed, I dreamed of him. Robert looked straight at me and said only, "The truth is kept safe, Evelyn, and you know where to look." I woke sweating. I looked at the nightstand, the Bible open to Proverbs and the key beside it, catching the first light of dawn. Then I wondered, did he leave something? A note? A will? But I didn't know the last straw would come so soon. The next day, Camilla rang my doorbell with a practiced smile and an envelope in her hands. Camilla arrived on a Thursday, around 4 in the afternoon. Toronto's sky was the color of lead, and the rain fell thin and steady, the kind that seems to wash the soul but also freezes the chest. I was in the kitchen, making chamomile tea. The kettle hadn't even started to whistle when I heard the bell. She walked in like she owned the place, took off her wool coat, hung it on the rack, looked around and said, "Wow, everything's still the same. You've always been so attached to old things, haven't you, Evelyn?" I smiled the polite smile of someone who prefers peace to confrontation. "They're memories, Camilla. Each one carries a story." She sat at the table without asking. She placed the envelope in front of me, sliding it across like she was handing over an employment contract. "I came to settle all this at once. It's better for everyone." "Settle what, dear?" "The house, the accounts, the assets, everything." A chill ran through me. She pulled a silver pen from her purse and said, "Thomas and I talked. We decided the fairest thing is for you to formally give up the house. You know, Evelyn, taxes, fees, they're high. You won't be able to keep it." My heart pounded, but I tried to stay calm. "Give up? The house?" She crossed her legs, leaned forward, and spoke in a tone that hurt more than shouting. "Yes, just sign this document. We'll sell the property, and you can keep a symbolic amount. That way, everyone moves on peacefully." a symbolic amount. I almost laughed, but the laugh wouldn't come. She was offering me alms for the house Robert and I built brick by brick. I looked at the envelope. Inside were 3 typed pages and a signature line. On the first line, in cold letters, waiver of inheritance rights. My husband's name, mine, my son's. All there, printed with the impersonality of a mass email. Camilla, dear, I haven't even seen the will. Oh, Evelyn, no need to complicate things. Robert was practical, and everything that was yours is now the children's. That's the natural order, isn't it? She said it with an artificial sweetness that made me nauseous, and suddenly I saw it. I saw how I'd helped build this abyss, always giving in, keeping quiet, believing love meant never saying no. I gripped the edge of the table. The kettle began to whistle, shrill, as if it were my soul crying for help. I breathed deep. I met her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, let the silence linger. Camilla, I'm not going to sign. She blinked, surprised. Sorry, what? I said I'm not going to sign. She leaned back in the chair, arms crossed, her gaze like ice. Evelyn, don't be naive. You'll only delay the inevitable. Thomas is trying to protect you. My heart broke right then, because I knew my son's name was being used as a knife. Even so, my voice came out steady. God protects those who are honest. I only want what's fair. Nothing more. She laughed, that short, soulless laugh. Fairness? Evelyn, the world doesn't work like that. What you have, you owe to Robert, and Robert is gone. That's when something inside me cracked. A quiet, decisive snap. Because she was wrong. What I had, I built too. Every sleepless night, every check that got us through the month, every prayer that held that man together while he was falling apart. I took the envelope and slid it back to her. If you want justice, Camilla, let it be before God and the law, not before your hurry. She stood up, furious. You'll regret this. Thomas will pull away. No one will take your side. I felt the weight of it, but I didn't back down. If that's the price of my dignity, it's a price I accept. She left, slamming the door. The noise rolled through the house like thunder in my chest. I was alone. Only the sound of rain and the kettle's whistle filled the air. I sat at the table, pressed my forehead into my hands, and cried. Not a loud cry, just the tired crying of someone who's held it all together for too long. When I looked up, the key was there, fallen on the floor. I picked it up. It was warm, as if it had a life of its own. That's when I decided to open Robert's desk drawer. Between old papers, I found a manila envelope with his name handwritten. Inside, just one sentence in his handwriting. The truth is kept safe. Find the safe. My whole body shook. I remembered the old safe set into the wall of his office. I'd never known the combination, but maybe the key would fit. I knelt right there on the carpet and prayed, Lord, if something is hidden, bring it to light. If there's a lie, let your spirit lead me into truth. I don't want revenge. I want peace. When I stood up, I checked the clock. It was exactly 3:31 p.m. 31. The number on the key. The number in Proverbs. My heart sped up. A quiet certainty settled in me. Something big was about to be revealed. The days after that confrontation were strange. Camilla stopped calling. Thomas, too. The silence that had been grief turned into something worse. Punishment. Every time the phone rang, my heart jumped. But it was always a wrong number. Even the church messages stopped coming, as if the world had forgotten I existed. The next Sunday, I decided to go to the service alone. People greeted me with that pitying smile we give to those who are holding on. But no one asked if I needed anything. I came home with an empty heart and one certainty. Isolation is the favorite weapon of those who want to make us doubt our sanity. That night, I sat at Robert's desk. I looked at the wall safe. It was old, thick iron, with a small keyhole in the center. I took the key. It felt heavier than I remembered. My hands shook. I whispered, Lord, if I'm ready to see what's here, let it be now. The key slid in easily. I turned it slowly. A click. The safe opened. Inside, I found a small wooden box, a brown folder, and a photograph of us, Robert and me, young, in the backyard of our first house. On the back of the photo, he had written in pen, "To remember that everything we built started with faith." A lump rose in my throat. I knelt, hugged that photo, and cried in silence. Then I opened the folder. There were documents, contracts, payment receipts, and, in the middle, a white envelope sealed with red wax. In the corner, the family lawyer's name. My heart raced. I opened it carefully. Inside, a will dated 2 years before he died. The wording was clear. "I declare, in full consciousness and in faith in God, that half of all my material and financial assets belong by right to my wife, Evelyn Grace Turner, in recognition of her faithfulness, care, and unconditional love. The other half shall be divided between my children. May this decision be respected as an expression of my will and conscience before God." Tears fell slowly, spotting the paper. They weren't tears of triumph. They were gratitude and sorrow mixed together. Because deep down, I didn't want to be right. I only wanted respect. I closed the safe. I knelt again and prayed softly, "Thank you, Lord. I didn't ask for wealth. I asked for justice, and you showed me there is still truth in this world." But the peace didn't last. The next morning, I heard hard knocks at the door. It was Thomas. He didn't hug me. He just walked in and said, without meeting my eyes, "Mom, what did you do?" "What do you mean, son?" "Camila told me you refused the deal, and that you're messing with Dad's things." "I didn't mess with anything, Thomas. I looked for answers." "Answers? Mom, there's nothing to find. Dad left everything to the family, and you're part of it. Digging through this will only make it worse." I looked at him. The same look my 10-year-old boy wore when he broke a vase and blamed the wind. But now, he was a grown man, defending his own cowardice. "My son," I said calmly, "you know how hard I fought for this house to exist. Everything here, the floor, the roof, even the soul of these walls, was made with my hands." He looked away. "Camila says you're confused, that you're letting grief control you." I drew a deep breath. "Camila is afraid of what will happen when the truth comes out." He stared at me, nervous. "What are you talking about?" I took the envelope with the will and set it on the table. "About what your father left in writing. It's all here." He picked up the paper, skimmed it, and fell silent. For a moment, I saw something shift in his eyes. Shame, maybe doubt. But it didn't last. He put the document back on the table and said, "This could be a draft. I don't know if it's valid. It's dated, signed, notarized. Your father trusted this lawyer." He stepped back. "Camila will want to see this." "Camila doesn't run this house, Thomas. You're making everything very difficult." And he left, slamming the door. I stood there, feeling the echo of his words fade down the hallway. I slipped the key into the pocket of my dress. That night, the silence was so heavy it felt physical. I sat on the couch, cradled the Bible, and began to read Proverbs 31. Each verse struck me like a reminder of who I was and who God still called me to be. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. I smiled. For the first time in months, I smiled. But the enemy doesn't sleep. The next day, I received an email notification. A summons for asset verification. Camila had contacted the family lawyer, claiming the will might be fake. It was retaliation. The cruelest way to say, "If you won't give in, we'll suffocate you." I went to see my pastor, a simple man, a widower like me. He listened patiently, drank my coffee, and said only, "Evelyn, there's no victory without a cross. If this truth is yours, it will stand. But don't fight with anger. Fight with faith." I sat quietly. He smiled and added, "And if you need legal help, I have a friend who's an attorney who serves with the ministry. Godly man." I wrote down the contact and the next day scheduled a meeting. I brought the will, the bills, the keys, the evidence. The lawyer, a bald, kind gentleman named Mr. O'Reilly, read everything carefully. Then he looked up and said, "Mrs. Turner, this is legitimate. The document is fully valid. Your husband left half his estate to you. They can contest it, but the truth is on your side." I breathed, feeling relief and fear tangled together. So I should fight? Not for revenge, for justice. And sometimes, the greatest justice is simply not giving up. I left the office with peace in my heart. But when I got home, the doorbell was ringing nonstop. It was Camilla. "So it's true. You went to a lawyer." "Yes." "You really want to destroy this family?" "No, Camilla. I just want what's right." She laughed, sarcastic. "What's right? Do you think God is on your side?" I looked her straight in the eye and answered, "I don't think so, Camilla. I know." She went pale. For a second, I saw fear in her face. Not fear of me, but of what can't be manipulated. A conscience. When she left, the house returned to silence. But this time, the silence wasn't empty. It was presence. I knelt in the living room with the key and the Bible in my hands. I felt a gentle voice inside me, not audible, but certain. "Evelyn, do not fear. Truth doesn't need to shout. It only waits for the right time to be heard." And I knew. That time was coming. That morning, Toronto's sky was clear for the first time in weeks. The wind carried the smell of wet earth, and the sun hit the windows with a golden light that reminded me of when Robert and I drank coffee on the porch. But that day would be different. It was the day of the official reading of the will. The attorney, Mr. O'Reilly, had scheduled it for 10 a.m. at the main office downtown. Camilla insisted on going. Thomas, too. I went alone, with the Bible in my purse, the key in my pocket, and my heart surrendered to God. On the way, the train seemed louder than usual. Outside, people rushed, and I wondered, how many of them are fighting battles no one sees? I closed my eyes and prayed softly. "Lord, don't let me get lost in pride. Let your name be glorified even in my pain." When I reached the building, Camilla was already there. Beautiful, as always. The kind of beauty that shines and stings at the same time. She looked me up and down and said, without smiling, "I see you're confident." I answered calmly, "I'm at peace. That's different." Thomas avoided my eyes. He looked like a scolded boy, ashamed his own mother existed. The attorney opened the meeting in a neutral tone. "Mrs. Turner, Mrs. Thomas, thank you for coming. As you know, we're here to read the will left by Mr. Robert Turner." He opened the folder, adjusted his glasses, and began. His voice echoed through the room with a weight that seemed to cross time. "I, Robert James Turner, being of sound mind and in faith, record this document as the expression of my last will." Camilla folded her arms. Thomas stared at the floor. I just held the edge of the table and breathed slowly. The attorney continued, "Half of all my material and financial assets belong to my wife, Evelyn Grace Turner, in gratitude for a life of loyalty, patience, and unconditional love. The other half shall be divided between my sons, Thomas and Michael. This will revoke all previous documents and reflects my conscience before God." Silence. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Camilla reacted first. "This is absurd. This paper could be forged." Mr. O'Reilly lifted his head, firm. "Mrs. Thomas, this document was notarized 2 years ago, with witnesses. It is legally recorded." She flushed. "But he was ill. He wasn't of sound mind." "The date shows he was still lucid, ma'am." Thomas stood, confused. "Dad left half to her?" I looked at him gently and said, "Not to me, my son. To the woman who stood by him through everything. The one who cared when no one else wanted to." He lowered his eyes. The attorney closed the document, set it on the table, and said, "This is Mr. Turner's expressed will. Justice has been done." Camilla rose abruptly, grabbing her purse. "This is theater. You all planned this." I didn't say a word. I just took the small key from my pocket and placed it on the paper between us. The metallic sound echoed in the room. Everyone looked. "It was this key," I said, "that opened the safe where Robert kept the will. He trusted me, even when the world called me invisible." Camilla stared at me, speechless. There was anger, but also something new, fear. The fear of someone who realizes you cannot defeat the invisible because the invisible has faith. Thomas, meanwhile, stepped closer. He picked up the key carefully and, in a quiet voice, said, "Dad always said you were the heart of the house. I forgot that, Mom." Tears came before I could stop them. I touched his face, as I did when he was a little boy, and answered, "You were just lost for a while, son. True love always finds its way back." Camilla left the room without looking back, and I, by instinct, didn't judge her. I only prayed in silence, "Lord, have mercy on her. Let her understand one day that wealth without a soul is only vanity." The attorney handed me a copy of the will. I tucked it inside my Bible, between the pages marked at Proverbs 31. On the way out, the wind was cold, but the air felt different. A lightness I hadn't felt in months. It was as if God had given me my breath back. I walked to the station, heart steady. People hurried past, and for the first time in a long time, I felt no hurry at all. That night at home, I made chamomile tea and sat at the kitchen table, the same place where I'd lived so many silences and prayers. I looked at Robert's photo, smiled, and said, "You kept your word, my love. The truth was kept safe, and now it's come to light." I took the key and set it on the table. The lamp's light gave it a soft, almost sacred gleam. But inside, I knew. The real inheritance wasn't on that paper. It was something greater. The courage to say no without losing your heart. The next morning, Thomas came to see me, without Camilla. He brought flowers and a letter. "Mom," he said, "Camilla went to her mother's for a few days. I wanted to say I'm sorry." "Son, forgiveness was given before you even asked. But why didn't you fight? Why didn't you shout?" I would have shouted. "Because when God is my witness, I don't have to prove anything to anyone." He cried. He hugged me tight, and for the first time in a long time, I felt my son's love for real, without fear, without a go-between. That night, before bed, I opened my Bible again. Between the pages, the will and the photograph. A peace so deep washed over me that I cried again, not from pain, but from redemption. I had lost my husband, but recovered something greater, my dignity. The dignity that never should have been bargained away. I closed my eyes and gave thanks. "Thank you, Lord, because what the world tried to take from me, your love restored." 3 months passed after the reading of the will. Winter began to say goodbye to Toronto, and the ice on the sidewalks gave way to stubborn little flowers pushing through the cracks in the concrete. The house, that big, cold house full of ghosts, started to feel like a body that was no longer mine. Every wall told a story, but each one also carried a weight. The echo of footsteps, the smell of disinfectant, the silence in the bedrooms. Everything seemed to remind me that life, there, had already moved on. So one day, I woke before the sun, made coffee, sat on the porch, and decided, I'm going to sell. It wasn't an impulse. It was a calling. That house sheltered me, yes, but it also held me prisoner. And I understood that dignity isn't about guarding ruins. It's choosing to bloom somewhere else. I called the lawyer and asked for help. The process took weeks, and when I finally handed the keys to the new owner, I took only 3 boxes with me: the Bible, Robert's photo, the safe's key. The rest I left behind: furniture, rugs, memories, everything that weighed more than it served. With the proceeds, I bought a small cottage on the outskirts of Toronto, near a lake. Nothing fancy, but it had a porch lined with flowers, a soft grassy yard, and just enough space for a new beginning. On the first day, I swept the hardwood floors, lit a candle, and said out loud, Lord, this is my new home. Let every corner of it be a dwelling place for your peace. And it was. The routine changed. I wake up early and make my coffee slowly. Silence doesn't wound me now. It embraces me. I started planting. Lilies, daisies, and a white rose bush a neighbor named Helen gave me, a widowed lady who lives 2 houses down. She was the first to visit. She showed up with banana bread and a genuine smile. I heard you're new around here. Welcome to the neighborhood, dear. I told her a little of my story, and she simply held my hand and said, God always gives a second beginning to women who didn't stop loving. Since then, we've had tea together every Thursday. We talk about flowers, faith, and children, without hurry, without open wounds. I also began attending a small local church where the pastor, a simple man in a worn hat, preaches without a microphone. He speaks slowly, with a gentleness that reminds me of Robert on his good days. Once, he said something I'll never forget. Freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's no longer needing to please the ones who hurt you. It felt as if he'd said it just for me. Over time, other widows from the neighborhood started coming over on Saturdays. We formed a small prayer group. We sit in the garden, sing old hymns, and trade stories and laughter. One of them, the youngest, said, "You know, Evelyn, I thought my life was over when he left me. But seeing you, I realized there's still so much to live." I smiled. I hugged her and replied, "We don't start from scratch, dear. We start from what remains, and what remains after pain is what's true." A few months later, I got an unexpected letter. Sender, Camilla Thomas. I opened it carefully. The handwriting was different, shaky, more human. It read, "Evelyn, I don't expect you to forgive me. I've spent long nights remembering the words I said and what I did. My pride blinded me, and now I see I tried to erase you because you reminded me of everything I still wasn't. I'm sorry. Camilla." I closed my eyes. I didn't cry. I only prayed, "Lord, heal her heart the way you healed mine." I tucked the letter into my Bible, between the will and the photograph. There were all the proofs that pain can turn into truth, and truth into love. The next day, Thomas came to visit, this time with my grandson, little Eli, 6 years old. When I saw him running across the lawn, his blonde hair bouncing, I felt something inside me come alive again. He ran to me, hugged my legs, and said, "Grandma, Daddy says a very brave woman lives here." My heart almost stopped. I knelt, wrapped my arms around that boy, and answered, "No, sweetheart, a very grateful woman lives here." I made hot chocolate, and the three of us sat on the porch watching the sunset. Thomas looked at me and said, "Mom, sometimes I think Dad planned all this, to teach us what really matters." He just reminded us where love comes from, I answered, and where it returns when everything else is over. The seasons went by. The garden bloomed, and I bloomed with it. Today, my hands still tremble sometimes. The body feels time, but the soul doesn't. I've learned that growing old with worth means no longer asking to be seen. God sees me, and that's enough. My home now smells like cake and wet earth. On sunny mornings, I stitch kitchen towels with embroidered verses. I give them to the neighbors, a quiet reminder of faith. My favorite says, "The wise woman builds her house." One day, Helen asked if I missed the old house. I smiled and answered, "No, my dear. That house sheltered me, but this one set me free." And every time I say that, a good chill runs through me, as if the Holy Spirit himself confirms inside me, "This is your place." Last Sunday, the pastor asked me to speak at the end of the service. He said my story had inspired other women in the community. I stepped onto the little platform with trembling hands and said, "I just want you to know that God never wastes pain. He turns wounds into testimony, tears into wisdom, and loss into deliverance. I am living proof." The church fell silent, and then someone began to sing "Amazing Grace" softly. Everyone joined in, and I closed my eyes. I felt as if heaven itself leaned down to listen. That night, I sat on the porch with my Bible open and the key in my hands. That same key that opened the safe, the secret, the ending, and the beginning. Now it has no practical use, but it carries something greater, the symbol of the truth that sets you free. I set it on the table and murmured, "Thank you, Lord, because when the world tried to silence me, your love gave me my voice back." And as the wind lifted the curtains and the lake caught the moonlight, I understood the inheritance I received wasn't made of houses or bank accounts. It was made of courage, of faith, of peace. The true inheritance was me, restored. This morning, I opened the windows and let the sun in. The breeze carried the scent of flowers from my garden, and for a moment, I caught myself smiling for no reason. It took me so long to understand that true happiness doesn't make noise. It only happens when the soul finally stops fighting. I went to the shelf where I keep the few things. The Bible open to Proverbs 31, the photo of Robert and me, and beside them, the small iron key. I ran my finger over it, slowly. The metal is cool now, worn, but I never wanted to throw it away. Because this key no longer opens safes. It opens memories, and in some way, it also unlocks the meaning of my story. Once it stood for fear, the fear of losing everything, the fear of being alone. Then it became courage, the courage to say no without shouting. Now it's simply a symbol of my freedom. God showed me there are doors that open not to confine us, but to set us free. And He taught me that dignity is the most precious inheritance a woman can leave behind. I look at my life and think, if everything I lived through serves to help someone rise from humiliation, then it was worth it. Today, I live simply, but in peace. The house is small, the heart is big. Faith is still my shelter. And if you're listening to me now, from anywhere in the world, I want to tell you something, woman. You are not alone. God still sees you, even when the world pretends you don't exist. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave your like. And remember, the key is still in my cabinet, but the one opening the doors now is God.